The thrashing survivors and bloody water no doubt attracted the sharks. The dead and injured were first to be hit.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for 50 mysteries that haunted us for generations and have today been, for the most part, solved.
It's a portal into the water beneath the surface of the valley, and it's the first one we've had.
Number 50, the mystery of the Lycurgus Cup.
But the interesting part here is that this is a single cup. It's a dichromic cup, which means that if you shine light from the front, it's going to be green, and if you shine light from the back, it's going to be red.
At first glance, the Lycurgus Cup looks like an ordinary masterpiece of Roman glasswork. But catch it in the right light, and it pulls off a trick no ordinary goblet should. This 1,600-year-old artifact appears jade green when lit from the front, and a rich blood red when the light shines through. For centuries, no one could explain how. Was it magic? A lost Roman art? The astonishing answer discovered by scientists in the 1990s is that the glass contains silver and gold particles that measure around 50 nanometers. These microscopic flecks manipulate light, making the color shift possible. In other words, the Romans invented nanotechnology more than 1,000 years before modern science caught up. Number 49, the Exeter Book Riddles.
I entertain men in their homes by rehearsing my whole repertoire. They sit, bowed down, quiet in their houses. Guess my name.
They're some of the oldest brain teasers in the English language. The Exeter Book Riddles, written in Old English, date back to the 10th century. The manuscript contains more than 90 riddles, covering everything from everyday objects to clever double entendres. For nearly 1,000 years, scholars and poets debated their meanings. It wasn't until the 20th century that most of the riddles were finally cracked. Using modern linguistics and fresh translations, scholars finally cracked the code. Today, most of the riddles have solutions. Some were clever plays on words, others were dirty jokes. What began as a medieval guessing game is now a mostly solved literary mystery.
Who is this person that wrote this? Who is the vigorous, warrior? Or the striving warrior.
Number 48, the true identity of the Ivory Lady of Seville. In 2008, archaeologists found an ancient VIP. Near Seville, Spain, they discovered an elaborate tomb of a wealthy Copper Age man. He was buried with crystal daggers, ivory tusks, and ostrich eggs. They called the skeleton the Ivory Man. As it turns out, they were very wrong. In 2023, a protein analysis of the body's teeth proved that the Ivory Man was actually the Ivory Lady. She's believed to have been a religious or political powerhouse who may have been running the show in southern Spain 5,000 years ago. Her grave is still the most extravagant burial from that era ever found in Spain. This Copper Age queen was buried with all her bling. Number 47, the source of Stonehenge's stones.
How did they get here? Why were they picked? Thousands of years after this site was built, there is still much to be learned.
For centuries, Stonehenge stood as a riddle in plain sight. How did Neolithic people drag giant stones across the English landscape? And from where? We can now answer the first question. In 2011, archaeologists uncovered ancient quarries in Wales, solving the mystery of the smaller bluestones. They'd been hauled over 150 miles from the Preseli Hills.
Why not build Stonehenge where they quarried the stones? Why move them so far?
That's a really good question, and not one that we can really answer at the moment, other than to say that really Stonehenge and the whole landscape around it, which is chock full of lots of other prehistoric monuments, must have been significant.
Then came the Sarsens, the towering sandstone blocks. In 2020, scientists cracked that code too, tracing them to Westwoods in Wiltshire, just 15 miles away. But the biggest twist came in 2024. Researchers found that Stonehenge's altar stone, the ceremonial centerpiece, likely came from southern Scotland. After centuries of guesses and legends, we finally know where the stones came from.
How do you think it'll go down in Wales?
Yeah, I'm not sure they'll ever talk to me again. It's a loss for Wales, no doubt, but Wales has contributed so many rocks to this monument, I'm sure Scotland can have one.
Number 46. Why did Vikings vanish from Greenland?
Frozen, starving, with their animals dying around them, isolated in the northern waste behind an ever-growing wall of sea ice. Did the Vikings hang on to their old ways, trying to raise cattle and sheep as they had always done?
The Vikings were the ultimate medieval globetrotters. They raided England, traded in Baghdad, founded cities in Russia, and even settled in Greenland in 985 CE. For nearly 500 years, Norse farmers lived there, raising cattle and building churches on the edge of the known world. Then they vanished. For centuries, no one knew why. But modern research has finally given us clues that they were victims of medieval climate change, suffering from rising seas and a collapsed economy.
These were the Viking sagas. In them, the Vikings, also known as the Norse, claimed to have traveled far to the west across the seas, to Iceland, Greenland, and beyond, discovering new mysterious lands.
Even as Greenland got colder, rising local waters flooded once fertile pastures. Worse, Europe stopped buying walrus ivory, the Vikings' cash crop. By the 1400s, the Norse Greenlanders were gone. Not wiped out, but frozen out. Number 45, an impossible Egyptian statue. Ancient Egypt had strict rules about art. This small statue broke all of them. Scottish archaeologists have wrung their hands over it since its discovery in the 1850s. It shows a pharaoh wearing the royal crown sitting on the lap of a kneeling man. To Egyptologists, that was impossible. No one but the gods were allowed to hold a king like that. For years, the sculpture stumped scholars. Then, in 2023, they cracked inscriptions that revealed the kneeling figure as Ramos, a top court official. This piece was, they believe, a tribute memorializing Amenhotep I. Ramos commissioned the statue to show his loyalty in life and his grief in death.
It's very important to communicate what we're finding to people who are living in the local areas, because these are the people whose heritage it is, but also these are the people who have the prospect to protect them for the future.
Number 44, America's oldest cold case.
Not only was there rampant disease, no question about that, starvation, there was attacks from the Algonquins, but also there may have been infighting, political intrigue, certainly accidental deaths.
Jamestown was the first permanent English settlement in America. It was also the site of the first recorded colonial murder. In 1996, archaeologists discovered a European skeleton buried beneath Jamestown's historic church. CT scans revealed a pistol shot to the leg that proved fatal. They designated the body JR-102C and moved on.
With a gunshot wound to the leg, you then had an artery or a major vessel that was damaged, and he died as a result of the loss of blood and died very quickly.
Then, in 2013, the mystery broke open. Historical records pointed to a likely victim, George Harrison, a Jamestown colonist who died in 1624 after a duel. He had fought against a rabble-rouser named Richard Stevens, who appeared to have used an illegal round. Stevens lived on unpunished for 12 years. But 400 years later, CSI Jamestown cracked the case.
We must have order, huh? We can't have everyone running around giving themselves airs and graces, because then we would have chaos.
Number 43, Mona Lisa's hidden eyebrows. Perhaps one of the great burning questions of the art world is, why doesn't the Mona Lisa have eyebrows?
Mona Lisa, I got to know, where the f*** are your eyebrows? I really want to know.
Did Da Vinci forget them? Did he never paint them in the first place? Was it a Renaissance beauty trend? In 2007, a high-resolution scan settled the debate. Experts found traces of both eyebrows and eyelashes. It was empirical proof that Da Vinci did paint them.
Suddenly, she doesn't look like the submarine goddess. She looks as if she's in the fresh air, which is just terrific.
They were just victims to the rigors of time. Most likely, the details either faded or were accidentally scrubbed off during early cleanings. The Mona Lisa's blank stare wasn't intentional, just a potential casualty of restoration.
Pascal's work has revealed, for the first time in 500 years, a detailed earlier portrait by Leonardo da Vinci. It's the same size as the face we see now, but turned by 14 degrees.
Number 42, the lost crew of the Mary Celeste.
Mary Celeste was hauling 1,700 barrels of raw alcohol to Genoa, Italy. Like all good captains, Benjamin Briggs kept a log.
When the Mary Celeste was found adrift in 1872, it became one of the creepiest mysteries in maritime history. The ghost ship's cargo was untouched, and the crew's belongings still in place. Half-eaten breakfasts were even left on the table, but the crew had vanished without a trace. For over a century, theories ran wild, such as pirates, sea monsters, and alien abductions.
Trying to understand why an experienced captain would do the one thing that really is unthinkable, which is to leave your vessel. Experienced person would do it only if he thought the vessel was going down.
Then, in 2006, scientists offered a strange, feasible solution. The ship carried 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol. Some likely leaked, filling the hold with flammable vapor that could have triggered an explosion from a single spark. It'd be loud enough to panic the crew into abandoning ship, and fast enough to leave no fire damage behind.
Oh, whiskey makes my nose so red. When I drink too much, I go to bed. Oh,
Number 41, a pirate treasure lost for centuries.
How did the ship then end up here in Cape Cod?
This was one of the worst storms of record, and it was in April of 1717, and it drove the ship right up onto a sandbar within probably 500-600 feet from shore.
The discovery of the Wida galley was like a real-life Goonies. Originally a slave ship, it was captured in 1717 by the pirate Black Sam Bellamy. He loaded it up with gold, silver, and his vast ill-gotten riches. Then, his luck ran out. A sudden storm sank the Wida off the coast of Cape Cod, dragging 4.5 tons of treasure to the ocean floor.
The sinking of the Wida wasn't just the end for Bellamy and his crew. It sounded the death knell for the golden age of piracy.
For over 260 years, the wreck became a pirate legend. Then, in 1984, explorer Barry Clifford discovered the wreck. To this day, the Wida galley is the only authenticated pirate treasure ever discovered. More than 200,000 artifacts have been recovered, from gold coins to weapons.
Look at that. That's an escutcheon plate, I believe, from a pistol.
Number 40, the identity of the man in the iron mask.
It was said that the man in the iron mask was kept in solitary confinement for most of his life, and he wasn't allowed to come into contact with anyone but a select few, including his musketeer guards.
For centuries, the man in the iron mask was one of France's greatest mysteries. He was imprisoned for decades, with his face always obscured by a velveteen mask. Was he a royal twin? Some guessed a political rival or even the king's father. But modern historians believe they have unmasked him. Records point to Eustache Dauger, a minor government official caught up in a political scandal.
No one must be allowed to see that prisoner without my express permission or on orders of the king. As for him, he must never leave this island.
Records link him to widespread sales of poisons and accusations of devil worship involving the king's own mistress. Dauger was a liability to the crown. What he knew made him too risky to release and too risky to kill. He was shuffled between prisons under strict orders. No one was to speak his name or see his face.
He was afraid to kill you, for his whole claim of power rested on the sanctity of royal blood. So instead, he devised a way to keep you forever hidden.
Number 39, the identity of the Somerton Man.
For 1 minute, he was well enough to light up a cigarette, and halfway through the cigarette, he was dead.
In 1948, a well-dressed man was found dead on Somerton Beach in Australia. There was no ID, no labels in his clothes, no obvious cause of death. All investigators found was a tiny scrap of paper in his pocket that read Persian for "It is finished." For decades, the case became Australia's most famous mystery.
His wallet was missing. The labels had been removed from his clothing. Somerton Man had been stripped of any clues to his identity.
Spy theories, secret codes, and poison rumors ran wild. Then, in 2022, researchers used DNA from the man's hair to identify Melbourne electrical engineer Carl Charles Webb. After 74 years, the Somerton Man finally got a name. The meaning of the strange note, however, remains a mystery.
There's a lot of backstory there that's going to be really fun to work on in the coming months and years.
Number 38, the Zodiac Killer's cipher.
The Zodiac Killer seems to crave publicity. He sent letters and cryptograms to newspapers and the police, recounting his crimes, threatening more murders, and making Bay Area residents very edgy.
In 1969, the Zodiac Killer sent a bizarre coded message to the press. It was a 340-character cipher filled with strange symbols, misspellings, and mind games. For decades, no one could crack it.
This is the Zodiac speaking. By the way, have you cracked the last cipher I sent you?
That changed in 2020 when a team of amateur codebreakers finally solved the puzzle. They used Mathematica software and pattern recognition to build an algorithm. They ran thousands of simulations testing possible solutions. Then the message clicked into place.
It was finally revealed. It said, quote, "I hope you're having lots of fun in trying to catch me."
It wasn't a confession so much as it was a taunt. The Zodiac declared he had no fear of execution, but envisioned a disturbing afterlife where he'd continue tormenting his victims. It was a wild breakthrough in a dark American story.
Being able to play a role in this is fantastic. I hope this decryption may lead to, better narrowing down who this person is. But I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Number 37, King Tutankhamun's cause of death.
I will be forgotten in the sand and time.
You will be remembered as a pharaoh.
For decades, no one knew what killed King Tutankhamun, Egypt's boy king, who died at the age of 19. Early theories blamed everything from murder to chariot crashes. Then, modern science stepped in. CT scans and DNA tests revealed that Tut suffered from multiple genetic disorders, likely caused by generations of inbreeding.
All we know is that King Tut was alive, and at the age of 19, he was being mummified.
He had a clubfoot, a cleft palate, and fragile bones. He was a frail young man put in danger on a daily basis. Researchers now believe his death was triggered by a broken leg and a severe case of malaria. The infection likely overwhelmed his already weakened body. There was no palace intrigue, only a rough family history.
These bone fragments lying loose within the skull cavity. Meaning what? Meaning that these bone fragments got inside after mummification.
Number 36, the Shroud of Turin.
We can see the most important thing, the double human image. Here we can see the face, the chest, the hands, and the legs.
A linen cloth bearing the faint image of a crucified man is one of the most famous relics in religious history. The Catholic Church encouraged the belief that it was the burial shroud of Jesus himself. For nearly 1,000 years, Christians around the world flocked to pay homage to the shroud at its home in Turin.
This linen cloth has bloodstains on it, and these bloodstains form two images of a dead man who was crucified, who went through an ordeal that corresponds to what we know about the Passion of Christ.
The mystery of the shroud sparked debates, pilgrimages, and endless speculation. Was it a genuine piece of biblical history or the world's most convincing fake? In 1988, radiocarbon dating revealed the cloth was actually made between 1260 and 1390, right towards the end of the Middle Ages. Some have tried to challenge the results, but no scientific study has overturned them.
And then they announced with a 95% degree of certainty that the shroud was medieval.
And wow, that's a tremendous blow to everybody who thought that the shroud might be real.
Number 35, the Bosham head. There have always been interesting relics in the UK, revealing the island's past as a protectorate of Rome. One of the most mysterious Roman artifacts was discovered in the early 1800s. A severely weathered, crumbling stone head was dragged from the mud near Chichester. Locals knew it was Roman, but no one could say who it was supposed to be.
Hold the circle!
It took more than 200 years to get an answer. In 2013, researchers used 3D laser scanning to reconstruct the damaged face. The features matched other pieces depicting Emperor Trajan, Rome's military superstar and builder of the empire at its peak. The Bosham head was likely part of a massive harbor statue, reminding Britons exactly who was in charge. Number 34, the Antikythera Mechanism.
It upsets all our ideas about what the ancient Greeks were capable of. It rewrites the history of technology. It tells us that things were going on in 2nd century BC Greece, which we had no idea about.
In 1901, a band of adventurous divers was combing a Roman-era shipwreck. What they discovered there made no logical sense. It looked like a lump of corroded bronze, but contained a complex mechanism of gears. It was centuries older than anything similar. Generations of scholars tried to decode the device now known as the Antikythera Mechanism, the world's first known analog computer.
We knew now what all the numbers in the tooth counts were, which had been a complete mystery before and not understood. And it was just a quite incredible moment.
In 2024, a new breakthrough came from an unexpected source, YouTuber Chris Budaselic. His mechanical reconstructions helped researchers decode the device's hidden functions. Recent studies suggest the mechanism was a complicated lunar and planetary calendar. The Antikythera device may be decoded, but it's still an outlier in the timeline of human technology.
That dial is a false deck. It doesn't take us anywhere but here.
He built it to get help.
Well, we just scared off the entire Roman Navy, so I think we've helped enough.
Number 33. Was Umbrella Man involved in the JFK assassination?
You can see him in the certain frames from the Zapruder film standing right there by the Stemmons Freeway sign. There are other still photographs taken from other locations in Dealey Plaza which show the whole man standing under an open black umbrella.
The first time most Americans saw the Zapruder film, they noticed something strange. It was a sunny November day in Dallas. So why was one man standing near the motorcade holding an open umbrella? That man was Louis Stephen Witt, now known as the Umbrella Man. Conspiracy theorists have speculated for decades that he was signaling other shooters, that the umbrella was actually a wacky Cold War-era gadget. Even Oliver Stone's film JFK leaned into the mystery.
The guy couldn't do the shooting. Nobody could. And they sold this lemon to the American public.
But when Witt testified before Congress in 1978, he claimed it was just a political protest. The umbrella was meant to criticize JFK's father Joseph for supporting Neville Chamberlain's appeasement policies. The excuse may sound thin, but to this day, no one has disproved it.
As I recall, the motorcade had already made the turn and was coming down Elm Street, going west on Elm, before I became aware that it was there.
Number 32, the Atlantis of the Sands.
So how the hell did you find me all the way out here?
I had some help. Salim.
Solomon, thank you.
We haven't much time. We cannot allow them to reach the city.
On the Arabian Peninsula, legends long spoke of a lost city buried in the desert. The Quran called it the Iram of the Pillars, linked to power and wealth. Western society called Iram the Atlantis of the Sands. Some thought it was just a myth, like El Dorado or Camelot. Then, in the 1990s, satellite imaging and archaeological digs uncovered a collapsed settlement in southern Oman. Researchers identified it as the lost city of Ubar, a once thriving trading hub that dealt in frankincense, gold, and spices. They immediately linked it to stories of Iram. It wasn't destroyed by magic, but likely collapsed into a massive sinkhole. The myth was real, and it was hiding under the desert all along. Number 31. Roanoke.
The most tantalizing clue in centuries to the colonists' fate was found on this watercolor map of the coast.
When English settlers vanished from Roanoke Island in the late 1500s, they left behind just one clue: the word Croatoan carved into a post. It was theorized that they were wiped out by hostile tribes, or starved, or even abducted by aliens. Recent research points to a much simpler answer: relocation and assimilation.
A replica of the kind of ship they arrived on is now docked close to where they made their historic landing. But after they arrived, the men clashed with Native Americans and started running out of supplies.
Archaeologists have found artifacts from Roanoke settlers mixed with Native American items on Hatteras Island, once called Croatoan. This provided evidence of British blacksmithing when and where it should not have existed. Other evidence suggests some colonists moved inland, joining friendly tribes near the Chowan River. The lost colony was never truly lost. They just blended in.
After the 7 colonists bury the remains of their peers, Dare writes that she's inscribed their names on a grave marker somewhere, along with further details of recent events.
In other words, there may be a second hand-carved message with more answers.
Number 30, the Paulding Light. Since the 1960s, an unusual light has caught the attention of many people in and around Paulding, Michigan.
It's black. It's pitch black. There's nothing there.
Its inexplicable nature and seemingly nightly recurrence evoked a new chapter of folklore. People came up with paranormal and supernatural explanations, such as the ghost of a railway brakeman who was killed by a train.
A train conductor, and it was his lantern that was swinging.
In 2010, students at Michigan Tech University hit the road in an effort to find the truth about the Paulding Light. They located the light origin area along U.S. Highway 45. Using a telescope and scientific methods, they reached a non-supernatural conclusion about what the Paulding Light really is: car headlights. It turned out the strange visual phenomenon was an optical illusion caused by atmospheric conditions and terrain. A+.
It's just like the twinkling of the stars, except, of course, you're dealing with something that's actually larger and closer to you.
Number 29. The Atacama Skeleton. The timeless question about the possible existence of extraterrestrial beings has come up countless times, often sparked by UFO sightings and natural human curiosity. In 2003, the discovery of an abnormal mini-skeleton in Chile's Atacama Desert brought the question back into the spotlight.
And it has 10 ribs when humans are supposed to have 12 ribs.
With an irregular head shape and rib count, this was a true anomaly. Many people couldn't help but jump to the conclusion that the skeleton might be of alien origin. In 2018, however, DNA analysis revealed that the skeleton was actually human, a human fetus.
But they're definitely still in a human being.
The small skeleton's extremely rare and atypical appearance was due to mutations associated with bone diseases. While the overarching question about alien life persisted after that analysis, the mystery of the Atacama skeleton was solved. Number 28. Crop circles in Wiltshire, England. Massive, intricate patterns engraved in the ground naturally evoke questions. There are few places like Wiltshire, England when it comes to the abundance of crop circles. But how did they get there? The mystifying figures started appearing in the area in the 1970s in wheat, barley, and cornfields. In the following decade, the mystery grew. In 1991, though, light was finally shed on the subject.
When did you start making crop circles?
Well, the late 70s, and about 1978.
Most of the crop circles in the area were not caused by UFO landings, as some had theorized.
It's just a bit of fun, and I mean, it's flattened corn.
They were the work of two men who admitted to crafting the patterns with tools, debunking any otherworldly explanations, at least for these specific crop circles.
We wanted to make the UFO societies think that a UFO had landed, you see.
Number 27. Crystal Skulls. Indiana Jones embarks on a journey to find a magical crystal skull in the franchise's fourth film.
Unbelievable.
The object represents a fascinating cultural phenomenon that started in the 19th century. Crystal skulls surfaced in different parts of the world, raising questions about their origins. People claimed they dated back to ancient Mesoamerican civilizations.
But today, mainstream scientists argue they are all modern creations.
Some believed the skulls possessed mystical powers, as depicted in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Studies in the late 1990s and early 2000s made things crystal clear. These skulls are nowhere near as old as previously claimed.
The ancient Mayan crystal skulls were, in fact, modern pieces.
Research concluded they were crafted during the 19th century. They still belong in a museum, though.
I'm really interested in them as the fakes that they are.
Number 26. The Herculaneum Scrolls. One might think the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE would have burned a set of ancient scrolls to a crisp. And, well, it kinda did, but not exactly. The Greek philosophical texts known as the Herculaneum Papyri were uncovered in the 18th century, and unsurprisingly, were in poor condition.
Entombed in volcanic ash for hundreds of years, these papyrus scrolls were carbonized but intact.
Deciphering these surviving scrolls is challenging, as unrolling them could destroy them. Despite their charred and fragile state, hope wasn't lost. A historic breakthrough came in 2023 when University of Nebraska computer science student Luke Ferreter used artificial intelligence to detect the first word from these ancient scrolls during an organized Vesuvius challenge.
15 columns of text in ancient Greek seen for the first time in almost 2,000 years.
Since then, AI has aided researchers in deciphering several passages from these damaged but not destroyed texts.
The new technology will now help to decipher hundreds of scrolls.
Number 25. The Lost City of Haliki. There's been considerable speculation about the locations and reasons behind historical lost cities. The ancient Greek city of Haliki is an extraordinary example of one such city with answers to those questions. In 373 BCE, it disappeared overnight. The cause, we now know, was that an earthquake and tsunami destroyed and submerged the city.
According to ancient texts, Haliki and all of its people were swept to the bottom of the sea, never to be seen again.
For over 2,370 years, Haliki's exact whereabouts remained unknown. However, in 2001, the lost city was rediscovered beneath a lagoon. Excavations and analysis unveiled alignments with historical accounts of the city's demise.
This glaze is typical of the time when Haliki disappeared.
Evidence supporting the identification of this site as Haliki became even more convincing about 11 years later, when archaeologists unearthed ancient artifacts.
Dora and Stephen had done it. The papers said it all.
Number 24. The downfall of the Nazca civilization. The driving force behind the end of the ancient Nazca society is just one of the many mysteries surrounding the civilization that resided in modern-day Peru. Strong evidence exists about Nazca people's methods in creating the Nazca lines, but plenty of mystery remains when it comes to their meaning and purpose.
The lines and shapes cover an area that stretches for hundreds of square miles.
The water irrigation purposes of puquios, which are ancient underground aqueducts, is another Nazca mystery that was unraveled. Perhaps an even bigger question associated with this ancient civilization is what led to its decline. Studies during the 2000s determined that deforestation was the principal cause.
Forests had been cut down by the Nazca.
Cutting down trees, likely for agricultural purposes, ended up being detrimental to the ecosystem, and eventually the Nazca people.
For the Nazca, it marked the beginning of the end.
Number 23. Martin Bormann's whereabouts. Hitler's private secretary Martin Bormann was sentenced to death in absentia for war crimes and crimes against humanity after the collapse of the Third Reich in 1945.
Bormann was the project go-between, making sure the Führer's name remained clean.
But he was nowhere to be found. For decades to follow, his whereabouts remained a mystery and caused plenty of speculation. Multiple reported sightings and rumors elicited a theory that Bormann had fled abroad.
Some claimed that they had escaped justice by crossing the Atlantic in submarines.
Other early reports suggested he was dead. The true answer was a mystery. Years later, organizations such as the CIA and the West German government conducted searches for Bormann, but to no avail. His buried body was finally discovered in 1972, and forensic analysis corroborated the initial reports of his death in 1945.
In 1973, the case of Martin Bormann was officially closed.
Number 22. Otzi the Iceman. Tourists in the Ötztal Alps on the Austrian-Italian border opened the door to a new historical mystery when they found a frozen body in 1991.
They have no idea the importance of what they've stumbled upon.
Subsequent scientific analyses determined that the Iceman, called Otzi, has been preserved in the ice for around 5,300 years. Researchers, of course, had loads of questions, and were able to answer many, including his gender, age, clothing, belongings, the circumstances of his death, and even his last meal.
He had wild ibex meat in his stomach, so he's clearly hunting for part of his sustenance.
They also theorized about how he looked. In 2023, new DNA analysis revealed a more accurate picture of Otzi's physical appearance, concluding that he had darker skin and less hair than previously thought. Thanks to extensive research, Otzi is considered one of the most well-studied ancient mummies of all time.
His death on the mountain would ultimately take him much farther than he could ever have imagined.
Number 21. Roman concrete.
At the origin of their success, innovation. With the creation of a revolutionary new material, concrete.
How ancient Roman buildings could stand for so long remained a puzzle for a long time. We're talking about concrete structures that have withstood the test of time. Thousands of years worth of time. Studies starting in the 2010s began to tackle the mystery behind this impressive architectural and engineering feat. Scientists concluded that lime clasts were a crucial ingredient in ancient concrete mix.
Roman concrete is a mixture of lime, sand, water, of course aggregates. Basically, it's modern concrete.
These white chunks were previously misunderstood. They functioned as self-healing mechanisms, preventing cracks in the concrete from worsening over time. Not only did this reveal the secret behind the remarkable durability of Roman constructions like the Pantheon, it also provided deeper insight into advanced materials and techniques used by early Roman engineers.
Concrete definitely represents a revolution in Roman constructions.
Number 20. King Tut's tomb.
This simple tomb is unlike any other royal tomb in the valley.
A young man named Tutankhamun ruled ancient Egypt between 1332 and 1323 BC. You may have heard of him. By the early 20th century, experts theorized that Tutankhamun was buried in the Valley of the Kings alongside other pharaohs, but the location of his tomb remained elusive. By 1912, it was believed that every tomb had been accounted for, except for King Tut's. So where the heck was it? Enter Howard Carter, who hit the jackpot in 1922.
Over 5,000 priceless artifacts, including golden statues. In the burial chamber, the pharaoh's mummy, wearing a golden death mask, was placed inside a coffin made of more than 200 pounds of solid gold.
Unlike other royal graves, which had been cut into the valley slopes, Tut's was dug into the ground and hidden by debris. Carter's work unveiled not only the location of King Tut's tomb, but also why no one else had been able to find it. Number 19. The Connecticut Vampire. The greater New England area suffered a vampire panic back in the 19th century, and this was exemplified through the burial of JB-55. This code name was spelled out in brass tacks on the man's coffin, and his skull and femurs were placed in the shape of a traditional skull and crossbones. Decapitating a body and arranging its bones in such a way was a historic method of burying suspected vampires. So, did we have a real, genuine one on our hands? Of course not.
What happened to JB, what they did to him, ties this strongly to Europe, to Northern Europe, to Germany, to Roman Britain, to Anglo-Saxon Britain.
A DNA test done in 2019 identified this vampire as John Barber, aged 55. Hence, JB-55. Barber had most likely died of tuberculosis, which gives people vampiric symptoms like pale skin, red eyes, and a bloody mouth.
You better hold on tight, spider monkey.
Number 18. Blood Falls. Antarctica contains a startling image.
Blood Falls is a bit of an obsession for a lot of people. I mean, there's nothing else like this on Earth.
Well, the whole continent is pretty darn startling, but we're talking specifically about Blood Falls. Found in southern Antarctica in the Taylor Glacier is a small cascade of what looks like deep red blood. This was discovered by the glacier's namesake, Thomas Griffith Taylor, in 1911. Of course, no one genuinely believed it was blood, yet no one knew what it actually was. For a long time, the leading theory was that red algae was responsible for the distinct color.
The red color is similar to in the Grand Canyon. If you've been to the Grand Canyon, you'll notice that a lot of the rocks are dyed a dark red color. And that's because there's iron in those rocks, and that iron oxidizes or rusts.
However, recent analysis has proven that the bold red comes from the presence of iron oxide. The iron salts inside the subglacial water oxidize when they reach the surface, changing the liquid from clear to red. Number 17. Ancient Viking Code. There's a lot to find fascinating about Vikings, including their system of writing. Like many ancient texts, the Jotunvitler, a rare Norse code, which dates back to the 12th or 13th century, left experts puzzled for years. It wasn't until 2014 that K. Jonas Nordby at the University of Oslo figured it out. The Jotunvitler had popped up on many rune sticks, but the one from which Nordby was able to decipher it, which he calls his Rosetta Stone, was located at Bergen Wharf, Norway. What made these runes so hard to crack was that they were coded, likely owing to their use as an educational tool. There's nothing juicy in the writings, but cracking an ancient code is still incredibly exciting. Number 16. The Starchild Skull.
During all my years of researching UFOs, the one artifact that keeps coming up is the Starchild Skull. I've never held the Starchild Skull in my hand, but I know that it was found in the 1930s in a cave in northern Mexico by a teenage girl.
It's amazing how often conditions and diseases are misattributed to the supernatural. We've seen it with the Connecticut vampire, and we see it again with the so-called Starchild. The distinct skull of the Starchild was obtained by paranormal author Lloyd Pye, who asserted that it belonged to a human-alien hybrid. This news captured our collective imaginations, but it's really an unfortunate labeling of a tragic reality. Tests done in the late 90s and early 2000s proved that the skull belonged to a young human male. Sorry, believers, no aliens here. Furthermore, Yale neurologist Stephen Novella attributed the cranial deformations to hydrocephalus, a condition in which cerebrospinal fluid accumulates in the brain and enlarges the head. Number 15. The Lost Army of Cambyses. Serving as the second king of kings of the Achaemenid Empire, Cambyses II ruled from 530 to 522 BC. Legend has it that in 524, Cambyses sent a massive army against the Oracle of Amun in the Siwa Oasis. However, the army was accosted by a devastating sandstorm and all 50,000 men were lost. For a long time, the veracity of this tale was questioned, as its primary source was the Greek historian Herodotus, who has been known to, shall we say, dramatize certain events.
For the Persians, this must have been a huge burden.
The logistics make it virtually certain that Cambyses' army could not have been as vast as Herodotus said.
But in 2009, archaeologists Angelo and Alfredo Castiglione found human remains and Persian belongings near the Siwa oasis, finally lending credence to the story.
Many have searched for this army, but all have searched along the oasis route. The oasis of Dakla, Farafra, Ain Dala, then across the desert up to Siwa. We worked on a different hypothesis since these oases were under the Egyptian rule.
However, it is important to note that some experts doubt the findings of the Castigliones. Number 14, the Flying Dutchman. You've probably heard of the Flying Dutchman, as it's been featured extensively in art, television, and film, including the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise.
That's the Flying Dutchman. She doesn't look like much.
This is an alleged ghost ship that inspired many a tall tale, with the legend dating back to the 18th century. It's said that the Flying Dutchman floats above the water and contains a crew of cursed and undead sailors. Reports of the ship even stretched into the 20th century, and that's because optical illusions are timeless. Yup, the Flying Dutchman is not one ship, but the result of an optical illusion called Fata Morgana. Essentially, some ships on the distant horizon look like they're floating owing to how light travels through different layers of air.
When there is what's known as an inversion layer in the atmosphere, typically the temperature of the air gets cooler as you go from the ground upwards. But when there's an inversion layer, the air near the ground is coolest and there's warm air above it.
Number 13, the city of Troy. And speaking of legends, it doesn't get much bigger than the Trojan War. A favorite subject of ancient Greek literature, the Trojan War details the invasion of Troy by the Achaeans. Many scholars debate the history of the war itself, and for a long time, they debated the location of Troy as well. Most thought it was merely a place of legend, but that viewpoint changed thanks to Heinrich Schliemann and Frank Calvert. In 1871, the archaeologists began excavations in present-day Hisarlik, Turkey, and discovered not one city, but 9.
Schliemann, with his interest in Homer, was not the first in this area. Frank Calvert, a British expatriate, had been living in the area from 1845 onward. He grew up in this area and gradually amassed a tremendous amount of textual evidence for where Troy lay.
Each city was built on the ruins of the last, resulting in numerous distinct layers labeled by Roman numerals. It's now widely believed that Troy 6 is the one depicted in the Greek myth.
History can never confirm if Homer's heroes ever lived, nor whether the legendary Trojan horse ever existed. But thanks to modern archaeology, the city in which Homer placed his heroes, the lost city of Troy, is lost no more.
Number 12, the Easter Island Heads. The Moai, as they're properly known, are some of the most recognizable monuments in the world. Populating Easter Island in Polynesia, the Moai were carved in a volcanic crater called Rano Raraku.
The Moai are considered to be no more than perhaps 1,000 years old. However, it has been established that some of them penetrate down into the ground by a great amount of feet to reveal the rest of the body, not just the oversized head. And the amount of patination suggests that they are infinitely older than 1,000 years.
They were then transported to the outer perimeter of the island, where they rested on platforms called ahu. We don't really know how the natives moved the statues, and for a long time, we didn't know why they chose the sites they did. Well, that particular question was solved in 2019 by researchers at Binghamton University. They discovered that the ahu were placed near sources of fresh drinking water, because that's where communities were inclined to settle. It's not dramatic, but it sure is practical.
Scientists are continually uncovering more of this history. But it is already clear that this was a remarkably complex society, of which the Moai were only one part.
Number 11, the classic Maya collapse. In the span of human history, the Maya collapse wasn't all that long ago, with the last city falling to Spanish settlers in 1697. But another major collapse occurred earlier, with most of the major Maya cities being abandoned between the 7th and 9th centuries. The reason for this is one of history's greatest unanswered questions. Well, it was until 2012. Turns out a number of factors went into the collapse, as it so often does.
They set up the city on the most fertile agricultural lands, down on the bottomlands that the river had carved out and made fertile over the centuries. By doing so, they were basically cutting off their own food supply. They weren't able to farm the best lands. They were then obliged to cut down the forest on the slopes. In doing so, that caused erosion, as they had to cut back even higher up.
The Maya greatly deforested the surrounding area, which exacerbated an ongoing drought and killed all agriculture in the region. Furthermore, trade routes had changed from land to sea, impacting local economies and forcing a relocation from the southern lowlands to the northern Yucatan. Number 10. The fate of the Franklin expedition. Captain Sir John Franklin's Arctic exploration expedition was lost after leaving England in 1845.
Franklin was searching for a shortcut from Europe to Asia through the Northwest Passage. His ships were caught in the crushing Arctic ice and abandoned off King William Island.
Over the years, many other ships set out to see if they could find out what happened to the doomed crew.
The top part of a human skull, and I think it's one of Franklin's men, like it's related to Franklin's men. Some part of the skull is broken, but just the top part.
While some clues were found, including grave sites of some of the men who had been aboard, it was only at the end of the 20th century that we began to get answers about what had caused Franklin and his team so much trouble. Unfortunately, we discovered that many of the crew members did not die quickly, but rather succumbed to diseases like scurvy and even lead poisoning after becoming icebound. And sadly, the rumors of cannibalism were also proved to be true.
The previous actions of the British crew had been erratic, even dangerous. After all, they had been eating each other.
Number 9. Mysterious notes in the Odyssey. Homer's epic Greek poem, The Odyssey, has become known as one of the most important pieces in the history of literature. While there are many things that we still don't know about the story's creation, an extra layer of mystery was added when a copy was found with unintelligible notes in the margin. The copy belonged to the University of Chicago Library and was a Venetian edition from 1504. The library created a contest to see if anyone could crack the code, and Italian computer engineer Daniele Maitili figured it out with help from colleague Giulia Cetta. Turns out the notes were written in a French shorthand and dated from the 19th century. Number 8. King Richard III's death. While his legacy has lived on through Shakespeare, King Richard III of England was the final English king to perish in battle. In fact, his death during the Battle of Bosworth Field is often used to mark the end of the Middle Ages.
It was here in the Midlands, on the battlefield at Bosworth during the War of the Roses, that he fell. The hunchback so-called villain king was cut down on the pointy end of his successor's sword.
But his remains were lost, and only uncovered in 2012 during an archaeological excavation of Leicester.
The position of the spine in the grave was interesting. There was a very noticeable curve in it, and that's not something that can occur just by accident. That's not something that can happen just by squashing the skeleton into the grave.
The following year, the body was identified as belonging to Richard III.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is the academic conclusion of the University of Leicester that beyond reasonable doubt, the individual exhumed at Greyfriars in September 2012 is indeed Richard III, the last Plantagenet King of England.
He had suffered 11 wounds, most of which were on his skull, which suggests that he lost his helmet in battle, leading to his demise. Number 7. The Sailing Stones. Known as sailing stones or moving rocks, observers have long noticed the enigmatic phenomenon of these objects that seemingly move on their own, leaving trails in their wake. The most famous example is found at Racetrack Playa in California's Death Valley National Park. Many experiments have been undertaken in an attempt to understand how these large objects move, and we now seem to have an answer.
When ice breakup takes place, when the ice begins to melt just enough under the light breezes, big ice sheets drive the rocks in front of them and just plow them along the bottom of this shallow pond.
On cold nights, thin sheets of ice develop under them and then float and are able to be moved by the wind, which propels the rocks as fast as 5 meters per minute.
Rocks move through a combination of a shallow pond, ice, light breezes, and sun to set them in motion.
Number 6. The Face on Mars. Between the Arandis crater and the Bamberg crater in the Cydonia region of Mars, spacecraft Viking 1 captured an image in 1976 that has fueled speculation for decades. That's because it looked, for all intents and purposes, like there was a face on the red planet. While people wanted to use this as evidence of an alien civilization, the actual explanation is a banal one.
I'm not going to have that thing in my house.
Scientists have agreed that the face is essentially an optical illusion, and that it's only present based on the angle from which you view it and how well lit it is. Number 5. The location of the USS Indianapolis. The sinking of the USS Indianapolis is among the greatest tragedies that the American Navy has ever experienced. Torpedoed by a Japanese submarine in 1945 during a mission to deliver parts of the nuclear weapon Little Boy, there were only 316 survivors from a crew of 1,195.
And I looked back at that time and she was up on her bow, going down.
In 12 minutes, the ship was gone.
The wreck remained unfound, despite several expeditions to locate it. But in 2016, new information was revealed that gave us a better clue of where it might be. And in 2017, a team funded by Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen finally found the well-preserved remains of the ship.
New images both haunting and revealing.
That's an unbelievable amount of damage from that torpedo.
Show the devastation caused by 2 Japanese torpedoes that hammered the USS Indianapolis on July 30th, 1945, while en route to the Philippines.
Number 4. How the pyramids were built. The Egyptian pyramids are one of Earth's most widely recognizable landmarks.
Many secrets about these magnificent structures remain. Built to withstand eternity, they seem in no hurry to reveal them.
But for many years, people wondered how they were possibly built without modern technology. Was it aliens? Well, probably not. It had already been known that the Egyptians likely used wooden sleds to drag large objects across the sand, but researchers at the University of Amsterdam added a probable solution to make this even easier. They established that by wetting sand, only slightly, it would create the perfect amount of friction to carry very heavy objects easily.
Wetting it with the right amount of water makes it remarkably slick. A team of 10 workers can easily pull a 1-ton sled. But people always seem to forget that Egyptians had animals like donkeys and cattle around to help too.
Another ancient Egyptian mystery that has a more clear-cut answer is the hieroglyphs that seemingly depict modern helicopters. Turns out these are a product of the stone being reused for more than one image. Number 3. What caused the Tunguska event? In a remote area of Russia in 1908, a massive explosion took place that flattened tens of millions of trees and produced an estimated 185 times more energy than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima.
Millions of pine trees, larches and birches are destroyed by the pressure wave and the fires. A shockwave circles the world, leaving its mark on seismographs everywhere. But no one can understand where it has come from.
It inevitably left many wondering what had caused it. For decades, people have speculated that it might have been an asteroid, a comet, a clash of matter and antimatter, or even an alien spaceship landing.
The night sky was illuminated for weeks after, and people were able to read their newspapers in the middle of the night from London to Asia.
But in 2013, it was essentially confirmed that it was in fact a meteor, when a team from the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine analyzed rock samples of meteoric origin from the site.
Researchers studied microscopic fragments of decayed vegetation dating back to the time of the event and discovered mineral combinations perfectly consistent with other meteorite impact sites, like the 50,000-year-old meteor crater in Arizona.
Number 2. The Bermuda Triangle. While some of the other mysteries on our list may not be commonly known to the general public, nearly everyone's heard of the Bermuda Triangle. For many years, people have wondered about the evils at work here that seemingly make boats sink and planes fall from the sky.
Ships that have shown up absolutely empty, no sign of any struggle, and yet the crew has just vanished.
But the explanation is simple and unexciting. While some may imagine the triangle as a small and specific area, it's actually a huge and not well-defined region that is heavily trafficked by sea and by air.
Bermuda is surrounded by a network of reef, like stunning reef. They come right to the surface. And when ships encounter those, they literally break them apart. If you go back in time to your old wooden ships and stuff like that, those ships had no chance.
In fact, your cruise ship may have sailed right through it without you noticing. Yes, plenty of accidents have occurred there, but they largely have logical explanations. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. Anastasia's escape. In 1918, The Russian Imperial Romanov family was executed by communist revolutionaries. But for years, rumors persisted that Tsar Nicholas II's youngest daughter, Anastasia, somehow survived and escaped.
So whether a sympathetic guard had rescued one of them, it's not beyond the realms of possibility.
It didn't help that several women throughout history have impersonated the supposedly missing princess.
The genetic testing proved beyond all reasonable doubt that Anna Anderson was not Anastasia Romanov.
The whole thing was fabricated.
Whoever she was, she certainly wasn't a member of the Russian royal family.
These speculations were fueled when the Romanovs' grave was found in 1991, and 2 bodies were seemingly missing. But by 2007, another gravesite had been found nearby, and DNA evidence conclusively proved that all members of the family are accounted for. It's a sad ending to the tale for those who preferred to hold out hope of her survival.
But the DNA evidence makes it clear that's what really happened. On the night when Russia's longest-lived dynasty came to its abrupt and bloody end.
Which of history's greatest mysteries has been solved to your satisfaction? Let us know in the comments below.
A botched execution. Anastasia may have survived the initial gunfire. Could she really have cheated death with a gem-laden corset?